Hey everyone, we are back. It's the Marketing Share podcast. I'm Alec, and with me is Barb, my co-host. Hey Barb.
Hey, how's it going, Alec?
It's good. Okay, so today's topic, we're going to get into a little bit on search, but I think the part that I'm excited about is also all this effect of AI and how that is affecting search. And
Holy
eh,
moly. The whole
yeah,
marketplace is going crazy, right? Which is search
yeah.
is dead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but and I think the thing is, it's probably not untrue, but the problem is like we don't know how it's changing yet.
Right.
And so I know I always feel like, wait, am I missing out on something? Do I need to be doing something now? I think that's the big question. That's what I really want to talk to our guest about today. His name is Corey Morris, runs a digital agency called Voltage, and they weirdly they call themselves a digital marketing agency, but they focus specifically on SEO. So usually don't find that. Usually, there's always digital agency. They do everything, but not these guys. They focus, which is good. So I kind of want to ask him about that. But I mean, I think this is just a really okay. We're recording this like end of February 2025. I'm curious, like, what is it? What are we going to think a year from now if we come back and listen to this
A
episode?
year from now, it's got like 3 months from now, it's going to change.
Yeah, I know. 3 months from now it'll change, but then like the year mark out, I wonder how much things will have changed even more. Because like even just this week, I was reading, they have the Gen 3 or whatever third generation models are coming out, which are another step order above. So I don't know. It's got to
Yeah.
have an effect on search, how people find you, where people go to get answers. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about.
I'm really interested in how's he approaching it, right? At the agency level with so
Yeah.
many of the changes happening, right? Because agencies have to look like an expert in these things, right? We're
Right.
all figuring it out as we go.
Right.
But also, what alternates are you using for SEO for accounts that are actually really down in traffic? I mean, that's a big issue that people are facing right now, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
We'll see. Well, all right, let's go talk to Corey and let's learn a little bit more about what's going on with SEO and all the changes going on. Hey, Corey, welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's just jump right into it. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, how you got into marketing and specifically digital marketing. And then I know you own and run Voltage, an agency. So we'd love to hear the story about how you got into that agency and where you are now with it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to chat today. My story is interesting, or maybe not. It's not interesting to me. Maybe it's interesting to some people, but the reason I use that word is I didn't take kind of a traditional approach. I went from employee to owner. I've spent my entire career on the agency side. I was at a point or two or 10 or maybe daily where it's like, do I want to be in an agency? Do I want to do this? But eventually ended up on a path where I got into a leadership role in Voltage and into a position where I got to go through a really positive succession plan and go from employee to owner. But through my career, I started in a digital spinoff of a traditional agency 20 years ago. A lot of milestones in 2025 for my career and for Voltage being a 20th anniversary as well. But started my career as a project manager before everything was open source. So what I didn't realize at the time was when I was sitting between developers and clients as the project manager that I was learning some HTML. I was asking questions so I could start doing some coding, and I turned that into and leveraged that. Turn that into a role doing SEO. And so I got really deep in SEO before we were calling digital marketing when it was internet and online marketing. And it was like set over here on the side as a specialty thing. And as digital became just really synonymous with marketing in general and advertising, found my way into paid search and email marketing and social and all the channels in more of an integrated way. And so I got deeper into the strategy side of things and to move through different roles. found a passion in talking with, the C-suite or business owners or entrepreneurs about their journey and their story, and just connecting all the dots to how I could help.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, today everything's digital, right? So it's like if you bill yourself as a digital agency, you're like big agency now. So but I guess my question is, you also now specialize in SEO, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what-
So Voltage was founded as a creative shop,
yeah.
and within the first few years started doing websites as well, because they were asked, well, can you help me with my website, by clients? And then I came in 2013 to answer the next question. Now, how can you help drive engagement, leads, traffic, sales through my website and through my business? And so we ended up getting pretty broad in what we were doing. We kind of full service ish, and we were doing everything from branding to in traditional graphic design and collateral to websites, and everything under that digital marketing umbrella, like the channels I mentioned earlier. And we were doing everything, and in some things we were doing as well as anybody in North America. In a pitch, I knew we could, win with our eyes closed. And some other things we were good but not great, or we were spread thin, in some other channels as well. And so that led through a process of looking inward and outward and where we wanted to be. And we took a couple of those things that we feel like we still do really well, or we could go up against anybody, and stop doing the things that were just good but not great. And so for us, that's search, both sides of it, paid and organic, and websites within the specific technology stack and for the right fit clients that we serve. So that was a process too, and that's a whole other story. But of like how you turn a ship like that after 17, 18 years.
Oh, so you only made this shift just very recently, the last couple of years?
Yeah, our new website announcing it to the world went live about a year ago, and that was the first time. That was when I had to get comfortable with like the second line on our site saying we're proudly not full service or integrated anything, and really planting a flag for the first time. And I thought that would be a 3-year nice, neat transition, but it ended up being one where we ripped the Band-Aid off last year, because it was hard to be in an old model and a new model, and be trying to sell and service clients doing the things that we really focus on, where we're going, and hold on to some legacy things. So we tried to turn the ship as fast as we could when we realized the challenges with that. So it wasn't the nice, neat process I would have envisioned, but I'm happy with where we are today in terms of how we best know who we are on the inside and can explain it on the outside, and our clients feel that.
Well, that's nice. I got to tip my hat to you, because A, it's hard to do, but B, in the short time that I did my own thing too for a little while, you try to be, try to offer as many services as you can, right? Because you're trying to bring in as many clients as you can. But my view has always been that agencies, like, find out what that agency really, really does well, and just have them do that one thing. And you've really just fully embraced that, right? Just like, look, that's the way it works, and it's the way it works best, I think.
And we have a number of strategic partners where if it's a channel, if somebody doesn't want to have 5 agencies that are specialists, we have plenty of those go-to partners that will work as an extension of our team. And what's interesting too is when probably 35-40% of what we do is agency to agency as well, where we became it was easier to understand what we do and to work with us when it's like, oh, you do those 2 things, and I need help in one of those, maybe for a full service agency or a branding agency or a PR firm or other people in the other specialties, where it's like, okay, I need search. I'm going to go to Corey and his team. I didn't realize that would be a benefit, opening doors like that and not being confusing and behind many of the layers that we were behind before, where I'm like, the elevator pitch is a mile long,
right?
Because I don't want to miss something of what we do, or miss the wrong.
You mean you can't be everything to all people at all the time, right?
It was good. So let me just say, I will say it was good for us for a season of growth, right? To go from where we were to, tripling in size, to be able to expand services and get on the map. But for the next phase of where we're going, I'm 100% comfortable and on that train compared to where I was just a few years ago in terms of my own entrepreneurial journey and
Yeah.
where I was steering us.
Well done. I started in the agency business too. And I, obviously we were in the creative agency, right? We were TV agency or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you had this digital arm or the promotional arm. You had all these little mini agencies that were part of your agency. So that's good that you were able to at least partner with others to deliver the full package, because that's what marketers, kind of want. They don't know who to pick in all these different areas, right? So at least with a network of agencies, you can make that solution available as well.
Yeah.
Now, Corey, in addition to switching the focus of the agency, I think you also recently just came out with a book, right? Was that around the same time?
I was in the process of writing it. So last January, I just decided to do all the things at the same time. But it was last January that I blocked out a couple of weeks, and I'm in Kansas City, so the weather was probably terrible, and I was sequestered myself to knock out the last of my manuscript. But we started working with a publisher a couple of years ago. Got through it in a year. I was like, a year? Can't we go faster? And it flew by. But my book, The Digital Marketing Success Plan, came out in July, and it's been a powerful tool for me, to be able to articulate what can be a messy, complicated, never-ending process of landing your digital strategy. Overall. So I took all the things we did, and I also had to get comfortable with giving it away transparently. I mean, for 10 or 20 bucks, any competitor or any client could be like, I don't need you, or I can go rip that off. And that's fine, because it's not just another like marketing tool or productized service or gimmick, but it's the framework to go through. It unpacks what I call the START as an acronym planning process, to go through 5 steps in 30, 60, or 90 days to get in and out of defining your digital marketing plan, to make it accountable, actionable, and objective, and not just in somebody's head, not just a list of tactics or things that are to produce KPIs, but to have a meaningful impact on ROI in any given business.
So I love a framework. So you got a framework for this. It's 5 steps. Can you give us a top line what those steps are?
Yeah. So naturally, the first, or the S, is strategy. And unfortunately, it seems very logical to start there. But unfortunately, there's just so much coming our way all the time, and so many activities or things we've just done for 10 years, content calendars, SEO checklists, whatever it might be, that are good things to do. But are they looked at through the lens of how much time or energy or dollars we're investing to produce them? Are we looking at them through the lens of connected to ROI or our ultimate goal and the business outcomes that we want to drive? And so strategy is important. It kicks off with profiling what's working, what's not, auditing, getting everybody aligned around your market research and opportunities there, and then defining the ultimate goal, and not a different goal for every team, for the sales team versus a product team versus a customer service team versus a C-suite versus the marketing team, but aligned around what moves the needle, and not in 17 paragraphs or your own book about, what it is, but be able to articulate it. I mean, it's been fascinating in large organizations where people have been in their roles for 20 years. They're all using the same inside baseball language, but they even have different definitions for what that means and what a success is. So getting that defined, then that makes the rest of the process easier, because that's the lens we look through for the other steps. So after we've got our strategy in a good place, then we get into tactics. And this is where we want to challenge anything and everything. You can go, I say often, and Google hasn't gotten mad at me yet, but I use Google as the example, but Google Ads, Google will take your money whether it's working for you or not, right? And so it's really expensive to go be putting dollars in ad networks or even paying agencies to do a whole bunch of activities for 6 months to find out it's not working, or they're the wrong activities, or to not challenge any bias you have. Maybe I hate Facebook, but maybe Facebook is where my audience really is, and to be able to navigate around that. And so this is the phase where it's cheap to test, and I'm not saying test by like run something in the wild, but this is to do the research, make sure that you understand all the places, all the networks and channels where your audience could and should be compared back to your strategy and your goal, and to align that. And so after you've got your strategy, your set of tactics, now we start to flow a little bit faster, because now we get into what I call the application phase, where you're taking an inventory of the assets you need, everything from any flights of ads and creative you're going to need for any of those to support those tactics connected back to your strategy, any improvements or deficiencies with your website. If you found gaps of, okay, well, we want to target this audience and achieve this goal, but we don't have any content around that, and your content strategy and what resources it's going to take, what you're going to need, so you don't get to the end of the planning phase and then you're like, okay, we're all excited to launch this plan, but wait, now we need 6 months to go get all the assets ready. So this is not building any assets or creating anything at this point, but getting your inventory right so you know what you need to launch. And then the R is review. And so that's, we're not just doing a reporting layer here, taking an out of the box set of metrics or dashboard that everybody has, but this is taking a holistic approach at looking at what the business outcomes and measures are that we can connect to our KPIs. So this is where we define, okay, well, what is a conversion? And if that's the last thing we track, or if we get an e-commerce sale, how much further can we track that out? How can we factor in business margin or profit margin or whatever it might be, or lifetime value, whatever it might be that matters to the C-suite or to the ultimate stakeholder or shareholder, versus just a bunch of marketing KPIs that say we got these clicks, these impressions, these conversions, and then leave it at that. So getting that right, because out of the box, that any software doesn't know how much and factor in your ROI on how much even the software itself costs, or teams costs, or agencies or other resources to see a holistic ROI on that. Now, I'm not saying every organization is that transparent and shares all that with the marketing team, but as deep as you can get in that, this is where you want to plan it. And then the last phase of start planning process is transformation. This is where the whole plan comes together. This is where we do things from blocking resources and putting our timeline together to documenting the plan, and whether it's a Word document, whether it's a spreadsheet, a deck, you have 100 dependencies, getting into the weeds on all the audits and things you did, but getting it into a format where this is something that you don't just get busy 2 months in and put on the shelf, and make it a working plan for your organization that even has time built in for testing and has checkpoints built in and ways to handle interruptions that are inevitable and will come during it. So it's a useful tool for you to move forward, and you have your resources lined up and you can just start executing on it.
I love having the structure. That structure is like on a lot of things in marketing. If you can go willy-nilly and you can just be doing lots of things, but if you have more of a framework and a model to follow, you can be way more effective. So kind of like what you did there to simplify that. One of the things, I want to get into some of the details of that, because as you were explaining that, one of the things that immediately came to mind was it's good to know kind of like what your tactics and the applications are. But one thing that seems to be always changing these days is Google and the algorithm, right? So, and what I'm hearing is like, it's just the pace of that change just keeps getting faster and faster, right? So help us understand that a little bit, especially for listeners out there who aren't SEO experts, right? Because we have a lot of marketers that are experts in other things, but not necessarily search. Give us the lay of the land. Tell us what it's looking like these days.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually, when I went down the path of deciding what kind of content I wanted to create and settling on a book, I had a working title called Be Found. But I realized that was too conceptual and not practical in terms of, what I was going to unpack there. That was like really the first chapter or two that I could write of why you need a plan or why you need a care. But basically, I was being asked and challenged by colleagues and other agency owners of, you're narrowing down and focusing on search. Do you think search will be around? And my answer was, well, one, I've done this for a long time and SEO has been declared dead. I don't know how many times I've written on that topic as well, for Search Engine Journal and Search Engine Land. But whether it dies and we call it something else and we're optimizing, or whether it evolves again and covers where AI is going and how and the changes with Google. There's always a brand out there who wants to be found by their target audience, and there's a place for people who understand how to do it, in-house agency, anyone, and professionally, to be able to help bridge that gap. And so what's interesting is I was at an event back in 2019, so pre-AI, pre-COVID even, where Rand Fishkin was sharing some information and data showing the rise in zero-click searches on Google. And so this has been happening for a long time. We survived voice search and all the other things that happened, and all the animal-named algorithm updates that Google made back in the early teens and late aughts. But we ended up in a place now where Google has its own, obviously, AI overviews that it's bringing in, and those are more volatile than they even were, just months ago. And zero-click searches are going up. And we're kind of in this in between where we're starting to see some traffic come in through other non-traditional or even emerging places. But my perspective on it is, obviously, those who, you can choose if you want first mover advantage to be positioned in AI search functions or other places people are looking. And there are a lot of advantages to doing that. You can ignore that until it's more proven out and we have more best practices and strategic ways to approach that and focus on what works today. Regardless, I find a balanced approach of testing, understanding where your audience is. It's not enough today to just use traditional kind of personas and we take a blanket approach and we mass produce content to put out there. With shrinking amounts of traffic opportunities, we're being forced to have to not just know who our audience is, but be laser focused on where they are and where they're searching and where to find them. And not, I don't want to say squeeze more out of it, because that's not the approach at all. It's more of be more one-to-one. If we don't have to focus as much on the masses, and we can't, or we're going to see diminishing returns, being willing to be more one-to-one, week to week, if needed, know where shifts are and where your audience is, if they're in, ChatGPT versus Reddit versus Google, whatever it is, and to be willing to adapt your strategy to go find them. And so within that framework, in that transformation phase, I mentioned how, making the plan work for you means that you might have to have testing time carved out. You might have to have milestones planned out for when you're going to revisit and pivot and not just be head down running the plan. And so a lot of this is about finding balance in understanding where people are, how the traffic sources are shifting. But no matter what, it gives you every opportunity and excuse to get more personal and real with your target audience.
I think you really nailed it when you said the balance, right? I've been shocked recently at how much I'm using even Copilot, right, for search right now. All of a sudden, I'm like, wow, is Google search dead? And how much I'm using it in my just business life, right? So, but it's really kind of an example that Alec and I had once, which is, you should share a YouTube link on YouTube if you want to build a YouTube audience. However, you should upload the video on LinkedIn because it favors you that way. So it's kind of like you can't go either or, but you kind of need to know where you're placing a bet, if you will, in some of those instances. So are you saying that maybe it's really a matter of not leaving one behind, but just starting to test a little bit? Is that the balance that you're striking with most clients?
Yeah. It's the balance of keep doing the things that work today, but don't be blindly doing that and ignoring what's to come. And so some people, some organizations, but organizations are people, and some people are wired toward having their head in the clouds and be playing with and testing the newest thing and losing focus on what's working today. And others we're so busy, we're so focused, it's hard to have time to test. So whichever camp you're in or way you're wired, I think having parameters around it is important. So, reining yourself back in if you're the one who's out there looking for the next thing and the tech and the toys, but also if you're the person who's focused and you just run out a day or week or month and you haven't been able to dig into it and go and get there, having intentional scheduled time. It's I have to I go back and forth both places. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I meant to spend 5 minutes in Chat GPT and I just spent my whole afternoon because I got that I was going to solve that one little problem and now I've solved like 6 months of problems that I didn't even know existed. Or at other points where I'm like, man, it squeezed out my week. So it was a Friday night and my wife and I are sitting next to each other and we're in two different industries, but we're both playing around with AI from 7 to midnight in front of the TV on, nothing better on a Friday night, right? So, finding that balance is critical. The diversification of traffic sources, I see it as a positive. I have colleagues who, clamor for the old days and want it to just stay the way it's been, but with the constant being change, it removes a little bit of Google kind of dictating the known and unknown variables to us and owning the market share in a way that we have to just kind of stay in a box or go test the limits of that box. Now the box is gone and there are opportunities to go find, new ground where our audiences are and to test out new tactics and strategies.
So let me dig into that a little bit. Give me an example. What do you mean by testing out some new tactics? Like when you say diversification, can you give us some real examples? Like what is an example of that diversification?
Yeah. If you go back to some of the traditional kind of pillars of research, of audience research and competitor research and even market research, of the marketplace overall, those are great starting points. If you're looking outside, in addition to looking inside. So some places to look would be looking at your own traffic sources. Are you starting to see a trickle of people from other sources like an AI website or something that you wouldn't consider in 3 to 5 years ago, a traffic source that you would see in GA4, which has its own challenges itself, but in your Google Analytics account, your traffic source reports. At the same time, if you're not putting effort into those, you might not be seeing those yet, just organically. And so that might be an opportunity to go back and research your competitors and look at and reverse engineer what they're doing and where they're spending time focusing on their content and where they're putting it. It's hard to see sometimes what gets fed into, large language models and whatnot, but carving out time to test, I would be testing how to train and how to educate and to go research where those models differ from traditional SEO, for example, or what someone is doing with landing page content or what they might be doing in automated workflows and drip campaigns and all the different things that come with it. I've used AI enough now that I can personally see, I feel like I could do the AI content filter without having to run it through something because I see a lot of patterns to match. But at the same time, some of the content is great. So I don't mind seeing some of the emojis in the same way or the bolded phrases like it outputs. But because the content is targeted to me and it's of the right quality. So some of the traditional principles still absolutely apply in terms of providing value and where our target audience wants to see it. But how you can automate workflows, speed things up, and be found in other places are the aspects of what I would be testing today.
So I want to go drill down on that because, what are some of the other places? Because, a lot of people are really nervous about their search traffic going down, right? Mm-hmm. So where are you seeing it? Because you're probably doing this for multiple clients. I mean, you could give us an area that you're seeing some different space winning right now.
Yeah, so not necessarily a brand new thing. It's been around for a couple of years now, but like things like LinkedIn newsletters, things like other ways that people consume content that can be indexed, whether it's by a search engine, but I do care about search engines, but not as much exclusively now of if I'm creating content, how can I repurpose it in as many formats as possible? And to your point a minute ago, Barb, about, whether it's, which network or platform, YouTube or other to post it on. If I'm investing in creating it, I don't want to be single-minded in how I publish it because I want it to be potentially picked up elsewhere. And in many cases, if it can be used for PR as well, some things are coming back around where I keep, seeing, thought leaders post about, well, maybe PR is going to be the new hot area because it seems to impact building equity for a brand and building a brand profile out there that then AI engines and search engines and everyone else can understand and see. And as we start to lose more, which was already happening kind of in parallel, losing some of the attribution and measurement abilities we had around everything, all these things coming together are kind of creating this interesting opportunity for us again to get the content right, get it tailored to our audience, and then work to influence all the different places you could get it out to, versus think channel first and then content second.
Okay, so is AI the factor that is driving this diversification?
That's a fascinating question because you go back, it feels like a long time ago. It's not that long ago, but Google launched AI overviews in a hurry on a day that we thought that OpenAI was going to announce their search engine. They didn't announce it until later, their search function until later, and they probably learned a lot of lessons from how Google rushed it out. It was telling you to put glue on pizza and to do all kinds of crazy things. They had to scale it back. Today, even there's just so much volatility in how those AI overview results are changing. So Google prior was already going through different lawsuits and antitrust things in Europe, and they're scrutinized here where they're going to have to potentially divest different business units because of how big they are with sharing data and things like that. So some of that was already trending that direction, and market share was kind of teetering, but again, whether you're talking about 90 versus 89% of search share, it's not that big of a deal. So AI really has differentiated it. And so really, I think putting it into those categories of Google trying to directly answer, going back, like I said earlier, to like prior to 2020 even, Google's kind of need to diversify some things, whether it's political or whether it's antitrust or whatever, of how they're doing that, plus the disruption of AI. So I think it's a number of factors coming together where it wasn't like this linear thing where we're going to look back in 20 years and be able to be like, those were the exact touch points, but a lot of those things working kind of in concert, I think, have accelerated it.
I hate to say this, but it feels like maybe you're going to have to pull back again and not be so SEO focused.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where this thing shifts, right? Not that it's not, you're still going to be focused on how to be found, but it may be in different ways, right?
Yeah, findability, searchability. Well, I mean, whatever we're going to call this, AIO versus SEO. I don't get lost in that. The lead on my SEO team rolls his eyes at all that because there's a lot of people just talking right now and speculating. But that's the challenge, though, right? If you ignore the speculation, you get passed by. But if you go speculate, you're, potentially not getting the ROI today that you need to.
Here's another question that's on the minds, I'm sure, of a lot of marketers. What should we be doing today with regard to the large language models? Like, do we need to be actively doing things to train them on what we want them to say about our company or us? Give us your point of view on that.
Yeah. So first, if you don't have a culture that's already embraced AI and testing and using it, look at what you can do to create, anything from, blocking out testing time, setting testing budgets aside, or even creating a task force that's cross-functional to share what some people are doing and to bring others along. So that's important. We were doing so many different things that I'm like, hey, we have to have a task force because we can't all be testing individually, and somebody may have solved a problem. I also learned the hard way of how hard it is if you've invested a lot of time training a model or training one of the platforms in an account, and then you want to go move to a different account. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who's like, well, why do you still use Chat GPT? Have you tried, tested the others? I'm like, because it takes so long to train it up. And, if I give it all these assets and I've got it, it has all of my assets and it's essentially creating, my own bots or agents working on my behalf. It's really hard to pick that up and move and reinvest that time again in something else. And so I feel like I have friends who are working on the cutting edge of software applications and AI way, way ahead of me in terms of how they're applying it on a day-to-day basis. And they feel like they're behind. I think what common denominator is all of us feel like we're probably behind when we think about someone else, or some level of imposter syndrome kicks in. So my advice is if figure out how to take the next step, and then you'll figure out how to take the next step beyond that. Okay. And so whether that's setting aside time and actually just testing and seeing what it can do, that will lead you into then unlocking the power of it to train it. Or for me now, I'm just wired in a way where it's a tab that's always open. And anytime I come across a task that I don't want to do, that I'm too lazy to do, that I just don't have anybody else to bounce an idea off of, or that I would go find another resource to do, I have someone an entity, a thing that can interact with me in real time and help extend, when it's trained up on my content, extend my content further without having to go get a human up to speed on it as well. Yes, there are some scary things about that of where it's going to go. I share some of those same fears, but right now, I'm at a point now where if I looked months back and where I was, or 2 years ago, I'm at a different point now of how it's integrated into my processes. And what I was considering getting a virtual assistant to do 2 years ago, I laugh because that would be so inefficient compared to some of the things I get in real time today.
I love hearing the story. This example likens it to me with, platforms, like a billion platforms that we have. I mean, how can you actually be an expert at every single one of the platforms that are out there? And you bring up something that I think a lot of people don't talk about. They feel it, but they don't talk about, which is the input and the resource required for expertise versus getting the most out of something, right? And how do you manage that? Because you mentioned, somebody's like, I'm still using ChatGPT, and somebody was like, wow, that's like old school. But I mean, how do you work with that? Because that is real, right? Even launching a new platform with our teams, we have to get everybody up to speed, and we're trying to get them learning. So how do you make that balance?
Yeah. We have some shared accounts and assets. So we have a shared LLM that we do a lot with. So we can all see what we've put in there and what we've trained it on, and we fed it and how it's organized separate, like from my personal account. But that's what's hard is understanding, and also following some ethical guidelines. We're under NDAs with clients, so we can't put certain pieces of content out into an open source model. It's got to be in a closed source, and then the closed source doesn't have access to the same resources to go keep training itself or get fed by the community. And so it's just, it can be overwhelming. And like I said, taking one step to start and then take the next one and unlock a lot of the possibilities. Those have been where I found the most meaning and opportunity. But at the same time, just last week, I've uploaded my 24,000 page book manuscript into it, and I get 90% of the time great stuff out of it. But it was helping me with a guide and that I was creating, almost a white paper style guide. And it was just leaving blanks in it. And then I'd say, well, you missed this. And it's like, and it's apologizing to me and telling me it's sorry. You're right. I did miss it. And then it would go give me another iteration. I went through at least a dozen, and it never got that content in there. and it couldn't figure it out. So again, where we stand today versus, a year or two from now, I'm going to hopefully be laughing about that. But it's interesting to see how we build on it and iterate on it. And, in terms of mastering versus, and using it for your day to day, putting that almost in a different category than understanding at a base level what all of them do and the differences in that. And again, as we talked about earlier, how to influence getting your content into them. So I think there's two different levels there of how you use it as a tool versus how you're found by your audience and what tools they're using.
So on that latter one, right? How you're found, it sounds like what you were saying, so correct me if I'm wrong, is it's still very, very early. It's just mostly experimentation right now, right? There's no definitive playbook yet for this. Is that accurate?
It is. And in some cases, some of the things that we're doing in optimizing our content for a search engine accidentally or through testing correlate or over to being listed in an AI overview in a search engine, or even in being referenced in an AI model that's sourcing the open web. But so for today, a lot of what we're doing is still the same things strategically and best practice wise that we would for SEO. But like we've talked about with a lot of testing and understanding the volatility of it as well, a lot of monitoring search results, a lot of monitoring traffic sources and competitors to understand when those shifts happen. And in many cases, there's no rhyme or reason to them either. It's like a big shift in one day and then it comes back. And it's like, oh, that traffic's back or that keyword's back. Saw an example going around today where also, Google is now ranking for a whole suite of health specific terms and referencing to itself, and it's linking to one of its own stores to sell you products. And it's like, wait, it seems self-serving. So I'm not saying that, and every, whether the Google is doing that on purpose, but there's just glitches in the matrix, and there are a lot of things happening here that will get corrected.
I've experienced a ton of glitches. Yeah, I've experienced a ton of glitches in the matrix as well as I'm looking through it. And, the other day I was using some things just to say how much, give me a quantity on something. And I realized I need a device on 2 ears, not just one, right? So I was like, oh, but don't you think we should know 2 ears? And of course the AI was like, of course we should. So I was like, I'm not sure how how much I can utilize it right now because I don't trust it, right? But anyway, let me ask you this one. So if I'm hiring an SEO person for my team today and knowing everything that's changing, what's on the job description today? What should I be putting into that job description that I didn't have yesterday?
Yeah. So, so many of the things that we do today have to be done smarter and not harder. Right. So I'll take the negative side of it first and come back around to the positive side of what you should have. So if you're looking at, you've got your job description, or, you don't want to have necessarily too much emphasis in the things of the past decade as if they're going to stay there, because you don't want to attract someone who's stuck themselves in a whole bunch of tactics or best practices or checklists. I've written an article in the past year that SEO, the dangers of checklist SEO, right? And it's the same thinking, even if things come on and off the checklist of best practices you should be doing. They might be the right things, but they're not necessarily going to move the needle for you. And so being able to understand how to leverage different tools, whether they're AI enabled tools or AI models, being able to understand how to get the most out of tools and software and connect in almost in more of a business advisory level and understand what moves the needle for the business, and being able to have enough agility, but be able to operate a plan. That's the key. There will be SEO
people and firms, unfortunately, who will not keep up or not want to put the energy into the next iteration, or will give up on it and move out of the industry. There will be a lot of disruptors who will be like, I'm going to AI that, and I'm just going to show up, and who will disrupt the industry. A lot of the middle ground that you want are people who have been through a lot of the battles over the past 10, 20 years and have seen all of the changes, different ones than what AI has presented, but seen all these adverse events that have happened with whether it's Google or the industry or economic conditions or whatnot, and understand how to take an assessment of it and to problem solve and troubleshoot around it and adapt strategies and tactics to match. So it probably leads in a job description to words that are harder to quantify, like adaptability and problem solving. But I think there are ways to quantify it further if there's any level of assessment you can do in terms of getting a case study from someone of when they faced a problem or a challenge that others struggled to solve, or to get an understanding of, okay, they can go into the weeds in the tech stack and the technical side of things, but can they come up far enough to match up to what the CMO wants or the C-suite wants, and to translate that over, especially to people who aren't living in this day to day. And that's an age-old thing, but it's even more important now to be able to understand where the organization is and where it can go and not create an impossible situation.
Okay, what's a good way to ask, whether you're interviewing a candidate or even agency, what's a good question that I could ask to help uncover what you were just describing there, right? In terms of what to look for.
Yeah, I think I would start broad and maybe drill down further depending on how much somebody digs in. But I would ask about, some of the questions about where SEO is going and their approach to that. And you'll get pretty quickly either hey, it's the 3 pillars of on-page, technical, and off-page, which are true. But if you don't get much in the where it's going or what we're looking at, or even hearing some of the phrasing around how Google has changed in looking at page experience, and it used to be, page speed and things like that, you'll hear some dated terms. And so anytime you hear a dated term, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a outdated person or entity, but that's where I would drill in further and understand, okay, cool, how is that going to change, a year from now, even if there's no guarantee. And SEO people don't like to make guarantees, right? That's been a thing forever.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. But at the same time, understanding figure out how dated that approach is, or how risky that approach is of being outdated going forward. It's not a perfect process, but you can learn a lot by just having someone unpack their POV or their approach and see if there are anchor points that feel like they're too far in the past or not forward in the present or forward enough looking too.
Yeah. Hey, that's why, we have this discussion right here. People are just sharing a point of view. Nobody's figured it out. I mean, one of the things I would ask is, what are you working on right now? What are you learning? Because we're all learning as we go along on this journey, right? It's, nobody has figured out what the impact of AI is going to be on SEO right now. Nobody's figured it all out. So, but day by day, you're going to be learning when you talk to different people about what they're learning too.
I like that one. That's a good one, Barb.
Great point.
Yeah. Anyway, well, it's been excellent connecting with you today. Where can someone find you if they want help from Voltage and learning about SEO, where it's headed, where they should be thinking about and what they should be doing going forward?
So a couple places I'll point people to if you want to see what we're up to at the agency, or have us, come alongside to work through the process of planning with you. It's voltage.digital. If you want to learn more about the book and the start planning process and framework, it's a long title, Digital Marketing Success Plan.
Let's see that.
I've got it shortened down to, so the DMSP.com instead of the full title. So the DMSP.com. And I've got some free resources available there. Just went live this past week. If you go to the dmsp.com/blueprints.
Okay.
Awesome.
It's great, Corey. Again, Corey, thanks for coming on our show. Thanks for talking about this. It's a topic I know that a lot of marketers have questions about. I think it was reassuring for me to know that, hey, look, it's still being figured out, right? I'm not behind, right? You're living it every day, and you're still saying, look, there's still a lot to figure out. So at least that's a little bit comforting.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you all having me. Enjoyed the conversation and the nerding out a bit, and look forward to seeing where we go from here in the next day, month, year, in terms of where this ride is going to take us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Corey.